sportsbookreview.com. I'm your host, Lee Martin, here to talk UFC Fight Night, Derrick Lewis versus Aleksei Oleinik. Joining me today, I have SBR's UFC pro, David Manyun, and MMA Mania's lead host, Matt Ryan. But before we get into any UFC talk, like always, go ahead, give us a like, and subscribe to our channel. That way you never miss a show. Now, let's get to it. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day, but I do need to ask first, Dave, how about last weekend? We had David Brunson versus, Derek Brunson versus Edmund Shabazian. I'm just highly disappointed by that fight. So, Dave, I really want to hear your take on that fight.
Look, we did actually go over this, and, that was the problem, and that was what kept me from betting Edmund, was the fact that he just hasn't had enough high-level fights. And boy, did Derek Brunson prove Edmund bettors wrong last week. He absolutely smashed him up. Edmund's not ready. He's not ready. And look, we can't be harsh on him. We can't critique him too much because look how young he is. He has more than enough years. And I'm not going to start bashing on Edmund now because look, if this kid continues, and let's not forget that Brad Tavares fight, if this kid continues training at a high level, and I think he should maybe travel to a couple different gyms and not just stick with that one coach. But the future of this kid is bright. And Derek Brunson, though, hey, damn, he can put himself in a few more pictures for the future now. So, it was a great fight. I'm glad I didn't bet on it. But I do feel sorry for those who were heavily invested into Edmund because that was a nasty way to lose your bet.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't put a whole bunch of money on him. I just put a tiny bit. That's what I was just like, let's see what the kid can do. But Matt, let me hear your thoughts for that fight. How did that go for you for your Saturday?
Well, it was disappointing. I kind of somewhat expected it because Shabazian does come from the Ronda Rousey camp, and they are in the build. Mm-hmm. Oh, no, we're in trouble here. And then against a fighter that can meet or exceed the skill set, as we saw with Ronda Rousey, that, it's about how Shabazian bounces back. I agree with Dave completely that he needs to go to different camps. He needs to learn different fighting styles. His striking may be great, but we saw a lot of deficiencies in his skill set when he's faced an older, more concise fighter, someone who's had more experience, leaps and bounds more experience than Shabazian. And when you look at Brunson, that was a really convincing victory for someone who needed it. You can make the argument that the Apex cage could have played a factor into it, as I said last week, and I'm going to continue saying with all these fights that take place at the Apex, that cage is the biggest obstacle or the biggest boon to any fighter who steps in there. And for Shabazian, I think that's one of the reasons why he got done up on Saturday night.
Yep. Well, we're back at the Apex again this weekend, this Saturday, the 8th. So let's get into the main card breakdown for this Saturday. We're going to start off with lightweight Beneil Dariush versus Scott Holtzman, a.k.a. Hot Sauce. Via BetOnline, their odds are Dariush minus 153 and Holtzman plus 133. Dave, I'm going to start with you. Can you give me your breakdown and pick for that fight?
I really do love Dariush. Ranked 15th. I think he should be in the top 10 by now. It's just sometimes it's just right place, right time, or wrong place, wrong time. He's riding a 4-fight win streak, and this kid has had 17 fights since he's been under the UFC banner for the past 6 or 5 years. 17 fights. I mean, come on. And 6, so for the past 6 years, 17 fights, and his only losses have come against, the high-level jiu-jitsu of Michael Chiesa, and then the nasty striking power of Edson Barboza and Alexander Hernandez. That is nothing to be shameful about. Now, his most recent bouts, for me, have been super impressive. It looks like we have a Beneil Dariush in the prime of his career for me. I'm still trying to figure out why he's not in the top 5, and I think that's just the fights that he's been matched up against. And here we are again. They're giving him a guy who I don't think that I wouldn't match Dariush up with Holtzman right now. This could be very damaging to Dariush because if he loses this, that is just a setback. Whereas, a win against a top 10 or top 15 would potentially put him in that top 10 or close to at the least. But now he's fighting an unranked guy in Scott Holtzman. It's just not doing anything for Dariush right now. I think they should be pushing him higher up that scale and giving him some big name fights, but they aren't. So it is what it is. He's primarily a grappler. With that said, he can knock you out. We've seen him knock people out. And then his grappling prowess is just on another level. Look what he did to Drew Dober, a high prospect right now. Drew Dober is just tearing people down. And he couldn't do that to Dariush. That black belt is serious. And I'll tell you something about his black belt as well. He took that black belt in 5 years. When you see that, and you find that type of information, it does make you question who handed him the belt. And, is it really that legit picking up a black belt in 5 years where it would take most people 10 plus years? No. He was winning the no-gi championships back to back. He won the no-gi championships 3 times under 3 different grades. So Dariush is so legit on the floor, and he's fighting a guy in Holtzman who is the older fighter. He's got the less UFC experience. And in all honesty, I just don't see him bringing much to the table to trouble Dariush this weekend. He's a good, well-rounded fighter, but primarily he's probably going to want to box in this fight. He's going to want to stand up and strike. He's well-rounded, but that skill set just doesn't translate into the top 10 level of opposition. And although Dariush is ranked 15th, I do put him in that top 10, and I think he could get into that top 10 quite easily. I'm surprised at the matchmaking. Unranked guy who will probably never make it into the top 10 versus a guy who should already be in the top 10 in my opinion and should be facing top guys every fight. 2 different trajectories here, and this is Beneil Dariush's fight to lose. The odds, I think last time I checked, were -160 on Dariush, and I love that price. I think that's great. I'd take him up to 220. I'm not going to lie, but be wary because he has been chinny. And that's my only worry. And I'm telling you now, if Beneil Dariush had a chin on him, like a Justin Gaethje chin, something along the lines of that, a Tony Ferguson chin, he would be unstoppable. And that's how I feel about Beneil Dariush.
Yep. Well, you mentioned he was -160 the last time you looked. But right now he's -153. So Matt, can you give us your breakdown and pick for that fight?
I've got to agree completely with Dave here. It is Dariush's fight to lose. You look at the numbers here. 4 straight wins, as Dave said, 3 of them by stoppage. He's been in the UFC for 6 years, so he's got that experience. But the key experience here against Scott Holtzman is fighting inside the Apex cage, which he did back at UFC 248. And also, this is a thing about Dariush. He's got 3 straight performance bonuses, and I have an odd feeling he's going to be chasing for a 4th. So if you're looking to bet on a stoppage or bet on something happening really quickly in that fight, Dariush is going to be the one you want to take. Now, Holtzman's not, just some run-of-the-mill jabroni. He has 2 in a row. He got a decision and a doctor stoppage win in his last 2 fights. But he has suffered losses to Nick Lenz, Josh Emmett, and Drew Dober. He's won 7 by decision, 5 by knockout, and 2 by submission. So more than likely, Holtzman's going to try to extend Dariush, try to make him go all 3 rounds. And I'm not sure Dariush is going to try to fight that kind of fight. If you look at his resume and look at all the things that Dave put together for you, it's going to be Dariush's fight to lose. I think he gets it, and I think he gets it either late first round or maybe middle of the second. That's kind of where I'm seeing this fight trend to.
All right. Well, if you guys do want to get in on that fight again via Bet Online, Dariush is -153 and Holtzman is +133. Let's move on to the next fight. We have women's bantamweight Yana Kunitskaya versus Julia Stoliarenko. Via Bet Online, Kunitskaya is -240 and Stoliarenko is +205. Matt, I'm going to continue with you. Can you give us your breakdown and pick for that fight?
Well, I'm going to try to give you a win-em right now when it comes to this fight. When you look at Yana Kunitskaya, she has lost to the biggest names at women's bantamweight, coming off a loss to Aspen Ladd back at UFC DC at the end of last year when you were able to leave your house, and has gone 3-3-1 in her last 7 losses to Ladd, Cyborg, and Tanya Evinger. Was finished in all 3 of these losses, so once again, smaller cage, bigger problem for Kunitskaya, but she has won 7 fights by knockout, 1 by submission, and 4 by decision. So she's going to look to find the chin of Stoliarenko. Coming into Saturday, Stoliarenko, it's her UFC debut. She is currently the Invicta FC Bantamweight champion, leveling up to the main card of the UFC in a card that is interestingly constructed, to say the least. She's got 5 straight wins, 4 of them by submission, so she's going to try to use that smaller cage to her advantage. I don't know about you, Dave, but I feel like Yana is in the position to lose this fight. I feel like Stoliarenko in this situation with the Invicta belt, looking to prove herself. First fight in the UFC on the main card of a, quote unquote, big card. It's the card before the fight of the year card next week. So for me, I'm going to go with Stoliarenko. Hopefully I can pronounce her name correctly by Saturday night. But for me, she has the most to gain. And looking at Kunitskaya's past couple of fights, this is a make or break fight for her. She might try to force something, and she might get stopped.
Very interesting. So, Dave, I'm going to read you the odds again. We have Kunitskaya's -240 and Stoliarenko's +205. Can you give us your breakdown and pick for that fight? And do you agree with Matt?
I mean, this is the odds are getting a bit crazy now, you see, because look, I understand Yana, she has fought a high level of competition, but when she's fought the high level of competition, she's been absolutely smashed to pieces. So, yeah, look, Yana Kunitskaya, Julia Zhu, Stoliarenko. I mean, good luck pronouncing that to the broadcast team this weekend. But yeah, Yana, what psychopath makes a UFC debut against Chris Cyborg? That's just ridiculous, in my opinion. Fair play to her. She is not scared to take a fight. After the bashing on Yana, let me say there's some good things about her, maybe. She defeated Renu and Lisa Landsberg, which, to be fair, they aren't bad wins, but these girls, the points of their career, it was a bit iffy. So to give us a good read on Yana's skill level is really hard right now, because she's 2-2 in the UFC. Her 2 losses are against beasts, and then her 2 wins are against, girls that have been good at certain times, but not so much when they fought Yana. So, I mean, look, she should have the advantage in the stand-up. That's one thing that I can give her. I think she's going to have the advantage in the stand-up battle. And yeah, maybe I would put Yana as the site favorite, just because, we have got a debuting girl, and, she has fought tough level of competition, and stood the test of time with one. But, and you know what, actually, I thought she was going to take Cyborg down at one point, that would have been impressive, but she couldn't quite get it. She's a strong girl. Comes from Russia, they love sambo. Well, judo. Everyone says sambo. Sambo is just it's an evolution of judo and karate, basically. That the Russians took judo, karate, took it back to Russia, made it their own. They all have that strong grappling prowess, and we've seen that from Yana, and I think she's going to need it against this girl she's debuting against. Yana is the former Invicta champion, right? Former Invicta bantamweight champion, right?
Yep.
And she's now fighting the current bantamweight champion. Stoliarenko has dropped the title to come and make her UFC debut, and if you watch the last fight that she had and when she won that title, wow. You look at her record, you see 0 KOs, right? But you go and watch that fight, and it was an absolute stand-up war. She couldn't have her way on the ground, which she loves to do, so she had no choice but to strike, and boy did she prove people wrong. The problem is, it's a lot of 1 or 1-2 strikes. There's not many combinations from her. You can tell she is not as confident in her striking game, but she's so tough. And look, she is the underground armbar queen right now. She's doing what Ronda Rousey done, and she is just locking in on her favorite submission, and she tries to get it. And boy, did she try to get it in her previous fight. And when she couldn't get it, she resorted to the striking, and even that worked out well for her. So I like what I see from this girl. I really do. And watching the aggressive nature of Stoliarenko just gives me confidence, especially now at +205. Mm-hmm. Because if we put these girls up against each other, it's not going to be all one way. If they fight each other 100 times, it's not going to be all one way for Yana whatsoever. These women MMA fights between Invicta and UFC, there's not a whole heap of talent differential. It's not that different. So I'm going to put my faith in Stoliarenko this week. She's 205 right now. Bet online, I assume. And look, Yana's favorite. I probably would put her at as the favorite if I was making this line, but no way would she be sailing into the -200s. Yeah. That's not justifiable at all. Yeah. If you're a long-term better, It doesn't matter what your opinion is. It doesn't matter if you've watched 50 hours of fight tape on Yana. If the number doesn't match, then it doesn't make sense to place a bet. Just stay away. Do
you feel like that's just lines makers using the name value and hoping that people that may have heard of Yana?
I'm telling you now, the price on this is just name value because nobody knows Stoliarenko at all. And people are going to look at Yana. They're going to be like, oh, my God, she debuted against Cyborg. Oh, wow, she's fought Tony Evans. Like, she's fought some real experienced girls. She's fought girls with 20-plus fights on their record, which is few and far between in women's MMA. But I'm not looking at that. I'm looking at what she's done so far in the UFC, and then I'm looking at her opponent and what her opponent could potentially do in the UFC. Yana's nowhere right now. She's 2-2 in the UFC. Stoliarenko is the Invicta champion who has just dropped her bout to make her UFC debut in a small cage where she can throw that armbar as many times as she likes. And I think we're gonna see a great fight. That's what I think. I'm actually excited for this fight. The more I'm talking about it, I'm getting pumped. Let's just move on to the next one. Plus 205, Stoliarenko. I do like that play. Obviously, half a unit. She's a debuting fighter. We don't go wild, start slapping 20 units, 10 units, all this crap that people talk about. No. Calm yourself. But if you agree with my opinion, then a little punt on Stoliarenko is not a bad move at all, in my opinion.
Yes, lots of value in this fight. So you guys, if you do want to get in on this fight, again, via Bet Online, Kunitskaya is minus 240 and Stoliarenko is plus 205. So get in on that. Next fight, we have middleweight Maki Pitolo versus Darren Stewart, the dentist. And he also fights at the MMA clinic, so I always laugh because I think like he's like an actual dentist. Anyway, via Bet Online, we have Maki Pitolo plus 165 and Darren Stewart minus 190. Dave, I'm going to continue with you. If you can give us your breakdown and pick for that fight.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Darren Stewart, he comes from London Shoot Fighters, which is 2 hours away from me. Trains with like a Venom Page from Bellator. You might know Marcin Howard from the UFC roster. And actually, Amir Ali Bazi, who's making his debut this weekend, trains out of Shoot Fighters. Because of the pandemic, I'm not actually sure where Darren Stewart's training right now, and I didn't do my research on that. But this fight is a really good fight, especially in terms of matchmaking, because these two, they are going to bring it. And we last saw Darren Stewart. It was the Cage Warriors event just before, the dreaded pandemic came into play. And Cage Warriors borrowed a couple of UFC fighters. After Dana White, he did go on record and say he would never cross-promote. He was a bit quiet on it. You did cross-promote, Dana. You gave two of your fighters to Cage Warriors, and so you should, because Cage Warriors, Irish-made promotion that's located out of London, so it's very close to my heart because I'm Irish and English, is a great promotion for the UFC. They provided the UFC with a lot of fighters over the years. McGregor. So exactly, one of many. And now, lending them a few fighters that weren't too bad, but Darren Stewart came in back to his old organization and close to hometown, and he got beaten up. Fabinsky surprised me. He was the underdog in that fight. I was fading him, and it did cost me. So I'm a bit worried for Darren Stewart, especially against coconut bombs, because Maki Pitolo, boy, he's not the most well-rounded fighter, but he can punch. And I think that if Darren Stewart tires himself out with his grappling, his wrestling, his forward pressure that he loves, I think it might not fare well for him in the later rounds. I think Pitolo can just maybe out cardio him and outstrike him. It's such a good the matchmaking is great in this one. It really is. It's a tough one to pick. I don't want to make it. I just don't want to make a prediction on this fight. I won't be betting this fight. I don't know what the line is. It's just too well matched. I personally think Pitolo he's got the higher ceiling to get this fight done inside the 15 minutes. I think Darren Stewart could win round one with his strength and his pressure. But I think that can soften up towards the second and third round, and them coconut bombs of Pitolo can really start doing some damage on Darren Stewart. I hate to fade my hometown guys, but I lean Maki Pitolo. I wouldn't be surprised if Stewart took the first round and you were able to get a nice price on Maki in play. That's probably the only angle I'd come to this when we're talking about betting. But no, I think it could be lights out in round 2 or 3 for Stewart, or even worse, a decision, which no one enjoys. But yeah, I lean Maki Pitolo, but in terms of betting, it's going to be a stay away unless it's an in-play time to get a bet in for me, I think, on that one.
Yep. No, well, how about you, Matt? Do you agree with Dave, or what is your breakdown for the Pitolo and Stewart fight?
All right, so looking at this fight, I had to look at something that my friend Stephanie Sotilli developed, the idea of science versus probability. And when you look at the way things break down, I'm going to go with the science option here, which is usually who has the better nickname. We've got Coconut Bombs and we've got the Dentist. And you can't bet against a guy with a Z that's just randomly placed in the nickname. I'm going with Pitolo, but there's actual reasons why, aside from trying to make people laugh. You look at Darren Stewart's record. He's got wins. He's 4-5 in his last 9, including that Cage Warriors loss. But he's got a win over a common opponent between Pitolo and Stewart and Charles Byrd, Darren Wynn and Eric Spicely. But Wynn, he's been up and down since joining the UFC. His biggest fight was against Filthy Tom Lawler in the card that we will never talk about again, put on by Golden Boy Promotions. But he's never been knocked out, but he's never had more than a 2-fight win streak since joining the UFC. He's never really been able to build up momentum. And I don't mean to slag UK fighters, but when you look at that and you see the guy can't get it into that next gear to build up a winning streak, to build himself into the top 15, the top 10. And then you've got a guy in Pitolo who has won everywhere he's went. He fought one fight in Bellator, just showed up and got a win, and then ended up in the UFC. He does have a loss to Dakota Cochran, who doesn't have the best record in the UFC, but that was earlier in his career while he was still building his skill set. He finished Charles Byrd at UFC 250, and this is only his 3rd fight in the UFC. So we have not seen Maki Pitolo to his full potential yet, at least inside the octagon. So I'm going to go with Pitolo here. I don't know how this fight ends. It'll be interesting to say the least, but I would also kind of stay away from putting anything on this fight just for my own health and well-being.
All right. Well, if you guys do want to get in on that fight again via Bet Online, Darren Stewart is -190 and Maki Pitolo is +165. So get in on that. We're going to go on to the next fight. We have middleweight Omari Akhmedov versus Chris Weidman. Via Bet Online, Weidman is -115 and Akhmedov is -105. Matt, I'm going to continue with you. If you could give me your breakdown and pick for that fight.
This fight just makes me feel sad. Like Chris Weidman, Long Island native, Hofstra adjacent, where I won an Associated Press award for reasons that are beyond me. He's lost 5 of his last 6, and his only win was against Calvin Gastelum, who we all love, but Gastelum opens himself up like a barn door at a country dance every once in a while and takes these big losses. Weidman has lost all of these 5 fights. His career 5 losses have all come within his last 6 fights, and they've all been by way of knockout, which Weidman's chin is not just gone. It moved out. It changed its name. It joined Federal Witness Protection and moved in next to Tekashi 6ix9ine somewhere in the greater New York metropolitan area. His losses are not against, run-of-the-mill guys. They're losses to Luke Rockhold, Jacare Souza, Gegard Mousasi, Yoel Romero, Luke Rockhold. Olive really enjoying the analysis right now. So this is Akhmedov's fight to lose. Weidman has so many things going against him. This is like his 82nd comeback. He's turning into the Terry Funk of mixed martial arts. I'm waiting for him to learn a moonsault at this point. But Akhmedov has not lost since April of 2016. His biggest fight was his last fight against Ian Heinisch. He's won all 3 of his last 3 fights by decision, and he's knocked out 7 opponents in his career. That's almost a third of his wins, almost over a third of his wins have come by way of knockout. So when you look at this fight and you look at Weidman's chin and the absence of it, you really got to hope that Weidman is just looking to take him down, looking to figure out a strategy and end this one early. Because if not, Akhmedov's going to try to go for a knockout. Weidman needs to cover up, protect himself, and hopefully he has found a new strategy that is, going to get him a win here. But I'm taking Akhmedov just off of the, all the things against Chris Weidman.
All right. How about you, Dave? Do you agree with Matt? I'm going to read you the odds again. Weidman is -115 and Akhmedov is -105. Dave.
Yeah, look, it's too risky. Anybody taking Chris Weidman this weekend
is in his extended family.
They're not thinking correctly. Now, look, he could win because this is the fight game, and of course he could win. But the chances of that are so slim, in my opinion. Before we bash him, he's a former champion, middleweight champion. He's an NCAA Division I champion, and he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He was an ambassador for MMA. He brought the UFC to New York, and I really wanted him to win in 2005 against Joao Romero when he brought the UFC to New York and then fought in New York. But he didn't. He lost, and to be honest, I hate to say this, and I hate to be that guy, but I believe that Chris Weidman has been overhyped for quite a while now. His most significant wins: Anderson Silva, Lyoto Machida, Vitor Belfort. Vitor Belfort had just come off the TRT and was a complete mess. Anderson Silva, at the back end of his career, he wasn't the prime spider that we know and love. And the same goes for Lyoto Machida, who is personally one of my favorite fighters of all time. It just wasn't. They were fighting a Chris in his prime while they were at the back end of his career. Chris was there at the right place, right time. Now, let's not take away his credentials. He is an amazing wrestler. He's a great wrestler. And you know what? His jiu-jitsu from Matt Serra and Ray Longa came on incredible. His striking just kind of came out of nowhere. The striking I didn't really see coming ever from Chris Weidman, but it did. And then it didn't. So from that 2015 where he started, fighting for MMA and to bring it to New York and all that stuff. He really put himself on the map. He did. And then it was Luke Rockhold knockout. Yoel Romero knocked him out. Gegard Mousasi, who's now fighting in Bellator. I'm not sure if he's still there, actually. I don't know.
I believe he is, yeah.
And then, the win against Calvin Gastelum. I don't know with Calvin anymore, that kid. I don't want to know with Calvin, to be honest. And then, another loss to Souza, and then that awful Reyes loss, which, to be honest, in my humble opinion, I think that Chris maybe should have stepped away. He's not going to be that guy that's going to start fighting people outside of the top 10 and lower ranked guys. He's not going to be a Jim Miller. He's not going to be one of them cats that just sticks around for the sake of it. He's a former champion. He's got pride. And I don't think this is a good way for him to exit the UFC. I'm not sure what Matt Serra and Ray Longo know, or if they know anything that we don't. But I have no idea why they would be putting their boy against Omari Akhmedov. Now, this could be a problem for Chris, because the international master of sports in Sambo and hand-to-hand combat. He's a master of sports in the Sambo and the hand. So listen, look, is a problem. Is a problem. Is a serious problem. And this dangerous Russian has remained undefeated since his move to middleweight. Chris Weidman went to middleweight just to test his luck, in my opinion, and it hasn't gone so well for him. I think Chris might get knocked out in the first round again, or Chris is just he's gonna suffer. I think he's gonna suffer against the Sambo champion. It's an intriguing matchup. I will say that, because I really want to see these two grapple. I'm not sure if we will. And Akhmedov is not the prettiest striker, but he certainly has the power to compromise the chin of Weidman, which is more of a chi now than a chin, because it's half missing. So, the grappling matchup, as I said, intriguing. Both these guys have attempted to grapple. When I was watching tape, I'm pretty sure they attempted to grapple in near enough every one of their UFC bouts. Omari, anyway, especially. Will that equal high level of grappling be cancelled out like we see happen often when you get a grappler versus grappler? I'm not sure about that, because Omari, he just grapples. That's what he does. And Chris is a Division I wrestler. So it's a tough one to predict how the fight will play out. But in terms of who should win, I mean, Akhmedov was plus 105 at Bet Online earlier this week. I'm not sure where he's at now, but if anybody is watching tape or paying any attention to Chris Weidman, that line will be gone by now. It's got to be Omari for me. Sorry, Chris. I love Chris Weidman. How can you not? If you're a fan of the UFC and you've been watching this sport, how can you not love Chris Weidman? he's a nice guy and he's a good fighter, but I just don't think that this is the time for him. But if he wins, I'll be happy. I sure as well be happy because and if he wins, I'd like to see him go out and leave, or don't start trying to take on all these fierce middleweights. It's not going to work out well. Paulo Costa, Izzy, Rob, Darren. No. I can see them matching. See, if he wins this weekend, I can see them putting Darren Till against Chris Weidman, and that is not going to be pretty.
No,
for Chris Weidman. Look, if he can get his swan song, well done. I don't think he will, but damn, this is a tough fight for him, and I'm taking Omari all day.
Dave, I just want to bring up, you were talking about why Longo and Sarah would push Chris Weidman to keep doing this. You've not dealt with people from Long Island on a consistent basis. They have the unshakable confidence of a person who has never done anything wrong. Long Island confidence and New Jersey confidence are the levels of confidence that it's like if you are Conor McGregor and you work at a Sunoco station somewhere in Merrick, which is a very New York reference. But it's that unshakable Long Island confidence that pushes Weidman, that pushes Longo and Sarah. And also Sarah's own story compels people to kind of put faith in guys like Weidman. So that's kind of where all of that comes from.
All right. Well, there you guys have it for the co-main. We have Omari Akhmedov at -105 and Chris Weidman at -115. I can't talk today. But let's head on over to the main event. We have heavyweight with the Black Beast. We have Derrick Lewis versus Aleksei Oleinik. Via BetOnline, we have Lewis at -210 and Oleinik at +180. Matt, I'm going to go with you. Can you give me your breakdown and pick for that fight?
Oh, this one's going to be a hard one to pick. Of course you go to me first on this fight. Derrick Lewis is probably one of my favorite fighters in mixed martial arts just because he's Derrick Lewis. His fights, with the exception of that Francis Ngannou fight, which we will never speak about again. That fight never happened. We're throwing that in the bin. Outside of that, he's won 5 of his last 7. His only losses in his last 7 fights have come to Junior Dos Santos and Daniel Cormier. So when you look at matchups for someone like Oleinik, that's a huge positive for him. When you look at it for Oleinik, you study the JDS fight, you study the Cormier fight, and you could see how you could break Derrick Lewis down, but the Cormier fight's kind of a weird false flag, even though Cormier, outpaced him the entire time. He took that fight on less than a month's notice and almost didn't even make it to the fight, neither did Cormier. But his last 2 wins came by way of decision, which is not something you expect from Derrick Lewis, who's only won 4 fights in his career by decision, 18 by knockout, and then 1 by submission, which, yet again, you don't really expect that. And then I'm just going to say this. Derrick Lewis is fighting in the baby cage.
How about that again?
Yeah.
It's like putting Mike Tyson in a phone booth in '85. That's just not going to end well for anybody. But when you look at Oleinik, his 2 recent losses to Walt Harris and Overeem really, really are kind of red flags for me. Nothing against Walt Harris or Overeem, but Walt Harris has never really been able to kind of rise above a certain level. And Overeem is in the later stages of his career. He's really taken a step down. He can still kill a man. But when you look at Overeem over the past few years, it's not the same fighter that beat Brock Lesnar, that dominated in pride, chemically or, overall. He has won only 8 of his 59, yet again, 59 wins by way of knockout, 46 of them by submission, which for Derrick Lewis, he has only lost once by submission, but he's going up against, a guy who's won 46 times by submission in Oleinik. This one's a bit of a toss-up for me. I think Lewis having some extended time off, being able to train, travel, less of a problem for him, I believe, than Oleinik. I'm going to go with Derrick Lewis. I'm going to take the favorite in this one, but it's going to be a hard fight for me to decide.
All right, Dave, how about you? What's your breakdown and pick for that fight? I'm going to read you the odds again real quick. Lewis is favored by -210 and Oleinik is +180. So can you give us your take on those odds as well?
I honestly thought the public may have juiced that Oleinik lineup for us a bit more, but since opening, it's only drifted 10 points. It opened at +170. You're saying now it's at +180, right?
Yep.
10 points, not much to go with. I wanted more. I really did. Look, this is a numbers play. We've got striker versus grappler matchup, but we've got a striker who's a killer. Look, before the arrival of Francis Ngannou, it was Derrick Lewis and Mark Hunt, who you avoid taking a fight with. And not many guys wanted to fight them two because they were the guys that will put you out with one punch, half a punch, third effort put into their punch, and they're still going to knock you out. But then you can argue the same for Oleinik and his grappling prowess. This guy has a nauseating amount of wins on his record and an even more nauseating amount of submissions. It's such a tough fight to pick, which it always brings me back to a prize play. It's not an easy task making a solid pick on the heavyweight division at the best of times. But when you've got one of the best submission artists versus the heaviest hitters, it just makes it even harder, and you'll be racking your brain all day long trying to figure out what's going to happen. But I do like what was mentioned in regards to his losses. Now, Oleinik's losses have came against two very different strikers, I must say, in Walt Harris and Overeem. But what they did have in common is they were just able to connect. I believe Overeem's was a straight jab right up the pipe that started that. Walt Harris is more of a reckless style, so I'd say Walt Harris is going to have probably the more similar striking output to Derrick Lewis, and Derrick Lewis hits way harder than Walt Harris, so it will only be one punch that's needed, one or two punches needed, and we could see Oleinik snoring. But in reverse, if he gets taken down, he is probably not going to get back up, and he's probably going to get submitted whilst he's down there. I know he hasn't had a lot of submission losses on his career, but that doesn't matter when you're go and watch Fabricio Verdun versus Alexander Gustafsson. Watch how good Verdun was on the ground, and then go see how he couldn't do anything to Oleinik. That's impressive for a guy who is 43 years old and has had more fights than anyone. You could start matching up the guys that are fighting each other on this card, and they're still not going to have had as many fights as Aleksei Oleinik has. And look, these odds for me, I have to look. Everyone can be piling their money on Lewis this week, and then we just see one of them shock submissions that Oleinik. It's not even a shock anymore. Look, the bookmakers putting their trust in Derrick Lewis, which is just going to leave us that undervalued line on Oleinik all day long. And I don't blame the bookmaker. I'm scared of Derrick Lewis's punch. I'm never even going to see him or meet him anytime soon, but I'm scared of it. So it's just one of them things. Derrick Lewis is going to be headhunting, and then we're going to have Oleinik doing nothing else other than trying to, disguise his takedowns with some awful striking or just straight grappling, clinching, wanting to get the takedown. I'm going to take my chances with the grappler. It's not a confident play. It's a price play for me. I think I gave this on Dogs and Their Odds article for Sportsbook Review. Half unit on Oleinik, and just hope for the best, really, because he could be snoring in 20 seconds, or he could be, laying on top of him for 10 minutes. We just don't know yet. But we will see this weekend, and it's another fight that I'm really excited for. So let's get it.
All right. Well, if you guys do want to get in on that fight, again, via Bet Online, Derrick Lewis is -210, and Aleksei Oleinik is +180. Well, that's the entire main card for this weekend, Saturday, August 8th. It's going to be at the UFC Apex again. Thank you guys so much for your time, like always. And if you're not following the guys on Twitter, definitely give them a follow. You can follow Dave at @DManion_, and you can follow Matt at @MRyan Consulting. And also, if you're not following SBR on Twitter and Instagram, definitely give us a follow at SBR Sports Picks. Well, also, I just want to say, Dave writes great articles for SBR. So if you want to check out his UFC analysts, head on over to sbrpicks.com, and you can check out all the other analysts our SBR experts write for other sports. Well, so again, thank you guys so much for your time and dropping some knowledge. Good luck this weekend, and thank you guys for tuning in. Until next time.